week's Dragonblade Authors Unplugged chat. I'm so excited to talk to these ladies today. I haven't met either of you before, so I'm really anxious to talk to you about your books. We have Dragonblade authors Heather McCollum, Lana Williams, and Alexa Ashton also has a release this week, so we'll talk a little bit about her book as well. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Great. So, Lana, your book released first this week, and it's Once Upon a Duke's Wish,
right?
Which is the first book in the Duke's Lost Treasure series.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Absolutely. The series follows three sisters who lose their father in an unfortunate treasure hunting accident on Oak Island. So if there's any fans who ever watch The Curse of Oak Island on the Discovery Channel, it has a loose tie into that. But I have been watching that show on the Discovery Channel for a long time, and they show a lot about it, the history of the dig, and they've been digging there since the late 1700s. And so I just thought it was really interesting to think about, gosh, what would happen? I mean, how horrible if you lost your father in one of those shafts that they dig, especially back in the day when safety wasn't always top priority. So Ella, the oldest daughter, brings her two younger sisters to London to reunite with their estranged grandfather, who is a duke, but he had cut off ties with his daughter, his only child, when she eloped with this treasure hunter. So they arrive in London, not sure of their welcome, but left with little choice. And so it follows, there'll be 3 books in the series at least, and they follow each of the sisters. So I'm super excited about it. It's got a little bit of mystery and a lot of romance, and hopefully I covered all bases.
You did. I love that, and I love when we get siblings.
Yes,
because it's so much fun to go from
right?
from one sister to another. Can you tell us about the hero?
The hero got an unusual tie. He is Leo, the Earl of Marbury, and he has an unusual tie to the family because his father is the guy that the Duke's daughter left jilted at the altar. So he had to put up with that all his life. And so the last thing he wants to see is the daughters of this darn treasure hunter who ruined his family's life, basically. So eventually his father did remarry, but it was never for love. And it was a long and painful childhood for him just because his father never got over that broken engagement. So he actually is an expert in pirate treasure. And so when Ella's father's journal that he has his notes of digging on Oak Island goes missing, he is asked to help with the search for that notebook. And reluctantly, he agrees, but he's a stand-up guy. And what can he do but fall in love with that Ella?
So does it have a little bit of a friends to or an enemies to lovers feel because of the family setup?
Yes. And, the thought of getting together with this girl when his mother is still alive and was very resentful of the father and his, undying love for this woman who left him. And so to try and say, hey, Mom, guess who I'm bringing home was not going to work well. So definitely he was very suspicious of them. So it was very fun to write. Love that enemies to lovers trope.
I do too. And I like it when they have to get out of their own way.
Exactly.
Well, that sounds like so much fun. And the Once Upon a Duke's Wish has kind of a fairy tale feel to the title.
It does. The opening scene starts with the Duke, the grandfather, who is, obviously having second thoughts about how he treated his daughter and doesn't even know really that he has granddaughters because he never opened the letters that his daughter sent him.
Oh.
And so he confesses, he's like, gosh, I wish things were different. I wish life had turned out differently. And then lo and behold, he gets 3 granddaughters showing up on his doorstep. So that was very fun to write.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it sounds like a lot of fun. A lot of fun. So Heather, your book is The Highlander and the Queen's Sacrifice.
Yes.
And it's the first book in the Queen's Highlander series.
Yes, the very first book.
So I hadn't, the first time I read the title, I couldn't figure out what you meant by the sacrifice. And then in the blurb, it's a really interesting setup. Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yes. So I usually write 16th century, and I love to write Highlanders. And so most of my books are up in the Highlands, but this series is different because it takes place in the Elizabethan court with Queen Elizabeth I, still in the 16th century, but down in London. And so it's about a Highlander coming down because he is trying to prevent an assassination of the Queen, not because he loves the English, but because there's a lot of political turmoil with Mary, Queen of Scots, being imprisoned by Elizabeth. And if he helps deliver something to Queen Elizabeth, Mary, Queen of Scots, who still has a lot of influence up in Scotland, will help his sister get to marry somebody that she wants to marry.
Oh, cool.
And it'll form an alliance. So he's got a vested interest in trying to prevent an assassination that may or may not happen. But the Queen's sacrifice comes along with that there is this woman, Maggie Darby. Her father and her brother before her were employed by King Henry VIII and King Edward, who died young, to be the person who tried on all their clothes before they wore them to see if they were poisoned.
Wow.
Okay, so she
Did they
is
actually do that? Like,
Yes.
did they actually poison?
Well, they never poisoned a dress. There was always a fear that they would. There were lots of poisoned gloves and accessories. Catherine de' Medici over in France did that a lot during that time period. And Elizabeth received, like, she has something like over 2,000 dresses. Like, she would get
Oh my
gifts
goodness.
of dresses and different things. And so Maggie Darby, she was trained by her father to be a chemist so that she would not be a sacrificial lamb, even though the Queen called her sacrificial lamb, because she had to try on all her gowns. In fact, Henry VIII and then Queen Elizabeth also used to have the people, the men of the chamber or the ladies of the chamber would also kiss their bed sheets and their pillows to make sure there was no poison that was put upon them, right? So they were very cautious about that because Queen Elizabeth had so many assassination attempts against her. So I take one of those, the Rodolphi plot, which is a real assassination plot, and I work it into the story and how Maggie Darby is trying to make sure that her queen doesn't get assassinated and that she doesn't get poisoned. And then Kurt Gordon comes down and he's trying to do the same thing, but something happens and it looks like he might be the assassin, the assassin.
Oh,
Nice.
And
oh,
so,
it's very hard to fall in love with the assassin.
right. And she already sort of knows him a little bit because of something that happens early on, and she thinks he's been set up. And so she's trying to figure it out, because if the true assassin is still around, then the queen could still get killed or she could still get poisoned. And she also is starting to fall in love with the hero. So,
Well, that's fascinating. I had no idea that that was a real thing, and the idea that, you know, it's like pufferfish gowns. You know, it could be okay, it could not be okay.
right. And there is one rendition of Elizabeth's story in modern movies where one of her ladies does put on one of her gowns and she dies horrifically. That never happened, but there was always the fear that it would. And it did happen with other smaller articles like gloves and things like that.
Oh my goodness! And kissing bed sheets. That's a big.
Yeah.
That's a. You'd have to be scared all the time.
Right. She was. And actually, Queen Elizabeth I, she was so scared of the dark that she would not sleep in her bedchamber by herself. There always had to be a lady sleeping in the room with her. So she had a lot of trauma from her childhood.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Yes.
It makes sense. Well, it sounds fascinating, and I love the stories where the hero and heroine have to, like, kind of band together to work against a common goal, or against a common enemy. So it sounds like very much fun.
And it's a little bit of a fish out of water story, because Maggie is very unique, as she's not like your typical lady of the court. And of course, he's Scottish, so he doesn't get, you know, the guys wear the big balloon pants, and he's like, you know.
Well, I can tell, ladies, that you both have done a lot of research for your books. Can you talk a little bit, since we've never spoken before, can you talk a little bit about your process? Can you tell me a little bit about how you go about researching your books?
Absolutely. Gosh, research is Most of the time it's a very fun process for me anyway, and I try and do the majority of research ahead of time to make sure I don't go astray on the plot. and and a lot of it I do on the internet. A lot of it I find. I love that Google has taken the old books that are out of copyright and made them available. And I found a very interesting traveler's guide that had some experience on Oak Island and mentioned it and it's one of the first mentions of Oak Island back in 1869, I think it was. And so little tidbits like that are just so much fun to sift through. And then there's other times, I guess, when you're in the middle of writing and you need that little detail and you cannot find it for the life of you. So that can be annoying too at times. But it's fun to research fashion. The etiquette at the time can be a pain at times. I sometimes skip over that maybe a little bit. Nobody wants to get too hung up on that, I don't think. And then, but the Oak Island information is very fun. Probably the biggest challenge there was just that there's several different accounts and it's hard to know what's what. But on the other hand, they still don't know what happened on Oak Island or who buried what there, if anything is buried there. But after all these years of watching the show, I will say that it sure seems like something happened there because there's a lot of evidence and a lot of artifacts they found on the island. But a lot of fun to research. And I have already completed the second book and did additional research there. So now I'm on to the third sister's book. So we'll see where that one takes us.
Oh, cool. Cool. Heather, what about you? How do you research for your book?
Well, I use the internet as well. I have some books too that I've collected through the years. And I'm sorry, my dog Sophie has to always be in the picture whenever I'm
That's why we like dog walkthroughs. We're perfectly happy with cat walkthroughs as well. And
I know. I was texting my daughter at the beginning, get the dog. But then she came back
the dog is welcome. That's absolutely fine. Sometimes might snore through the whole entire interview. So. They have frogs.
Well, I am very lucky. Like I'm going to Scotland actually on Tuesday.
Wow. That's so exciting.
Knock on wood. I'm like so worried something will happen.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to Rare Edinburgh, which is a big book signing in Edinburgh. And so when I'm there, we're staying an extra week so that I can go around to several castles, so I can roll around on the moors and breathe in the air. And I go around the castles and I touch all the stones and think, who touched right here?
My.
I asked my daughter, who's really into crystals, I'm like, do you have any crystals that would allow me to see dead people? She's like, I'll hook you up, Mom.
Love it.
Well, you have to let us know if that part works out okay.
Yes, I will. But so I prefer to do, hands-on, where I can smell and feel the cold breezes on the moors and things like that. But with COVID, I haven't been able to do that. So I'm very excited, knock on wood, to go back this Tuesday to do that. But yes, I do a lot of research. But it's funny, after writing so many books set in the 16th century, I sort of know it better than like nowadays. I know things that, so anyways, you start to get used to that language and that, and I'll find that like words like shall and stuff will start populating my vocabulary when I'm done. Anyways.
Well, I know when you sent the answers to your interview questions, you said you sent pictures of yourself in costume.
Oh, yes.
Do you get to do that kind of thing very often? I'm really looking forward to HRR this year because I've never had a chance to dress up like that. So I'm really looking forward to that part of it.
Yes, I'll be there too. But yes, I love dressing in vintage costumes, and I'm really excited now that they call it cosplay and not that I'm just that crazy lady who likes to dress up. So I have like
cool now.
So actually later today, I'm going to be dressing in my Tudor dress. My daughter's going to help me and I'm going to record it. So I like to wear the stays and stuff because then I can feel more about what my heroines are going through. I mean, I've written some books where a Scottish woman comes down and has to wear the proper everything, and how confining and constricting that might feel to her. Whereas those who are raised in that sort of thing, it doesn't bother them. It's just like us wearing a modern underwear, you know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I do. I love to dress in. I have all different time periods.
Lana, have you had a chance to do that?
Only for like a writer's conference. We had a dress up day, and I dressed up like one of my characters in a Victorian gown with the bustle and all the padding.
Wow.
And it felt like about 50 pounds on top of me. So it was more a challenge to wear. Those women are stronger than you know.
They also fainted a lot.
Oh, right? Absolutely. I did not do the corset, just saying.
I love watching the costumes, the historic costume TikTokers.
Oh,
I love watching them get dressed and go from just a chemise to like the full
I
thing.
so want to do that. I'm trying to find someone who can record me doing the different layers.
Yes. Oh, that'd be so great. Can't wait.
So I think Lana, it was you that talked about doing your research ahead of time so you don't get sidetracked in the plot. And I apologize, there are frogs behind me. They're getting quite loud. So maybe they're not too intrusive. Do you plot your books out ahead of time? Do you know exactly where you're going to go, or do you have a basic idea, or what is your writing process like?
I guess I'm a reluctant plotter because, you write a few times and you realize you just wrote yourself into a corner and you realize you never, ever want to do that again. So I usually, the characters come to me first and I figure those out fairly deeply. And then I step into the plot a little bit more and they sort of start to come hand in hand, I think. And I have a basic idea of what I want to do, and then I kind of hit, the few main plot points that I know I want to hit. And then from there, the story is probably a little more organic. I wish I was one of those people who could, have the Excel spreadsheet with every scene lined out and in great detail, but darn it, I am not, apparently. And even when I write a synopsis or whatever, it's oftentimes the story wanders away on its own, but at least usually I have a basic idea of where I'm going and then just see where it takes me. So I guess I'm a little bit of both.
That makes sense. I need to have a little bit of something that I don't know to keep going too.
Right?
I think,
yeah. Keeps it exciting and interesting, and
I think it keeps you engaged too.
Right.
Heather, what about you?
Reluctant plotters unite. I am a pantser. I'm a pantser. However, I have tried really hard.
Oh, look at you.
So I do stuff like this. This is erasable.
I'm so impressed.
So I can try to do it, but then then it sort of doesn't end up this. Right? I try really hard, but then it's like then I get to know my characters and see what I do. I do this more. This is more me. Like I will make collages.
Oh wow!
So I love it. This isn't a really full one, but so I'll make collages to help me figure out people and dates and where their scars are and their names, even because I'm known to change names. So I'm more of a hands-on than plotting it all out. And this helps me kind of go in a direction, and I don't know, it works with my creative mind somehow a little bit better, but I try to be a plotter just like you do, Lana, and inevitably I end up being a pantser. So I'm like,
I hear you.
But I know, I'm like, if I could just plot it out, it would go so much faster. And I wouldn't write myself into corners, but it just, I can't. My hero and heroine take over. Like they take over.
Right.
So do you hear them talk to you? I know, we have a wide variety of processes at Dragonblade. Some authors like Emily E.K. Murdoch plots everything out, 30,000 words of plotting before she gets to it. But C.H. Moran just lets the people talk in her head. And write down what they said. And we have everything in the range in between. Do you hear your characters' voices if you're doing the collage like that? Do you have them?
Yes,
do you have them come to you while you're working?
Yes, and I'll try. Like one book I was writing, and I was trying to make the hero funny, because the book I'd just written, the hero was funny and it was hilarious and I loved it. And I wanted to make another hero that way. I rewrote the first 70 pages 3 times because this hero refused. He kept just looking at me like, what? Do you know my backstory? Come on. He was the most tortured hero. And so finally I was like, okay, you're telling me you won't do this. I have to honor the person I have created, and I have to respect that. And then it flowed. Then I was able to do it and it turned out beautifully. But yeah, I hear it, but I try to turn it off and I try to write it the way I want, but then they always win.
You can almost always tell when you're going astray because you get stuck,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like that when the story sticks you, it's like, oh, I took a wrong turn somewhere. I missed something I should have been paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Lana, what about you? Do you have voices in your head?
Yeah, I mean, I see like little snippets of a movie of the characters usually. Yeah. And so I listen to that oftentimes, but a lot of times it comes in order, thank goodness. But sometimes I, know the big dramatic scene and not the stuff that needs to happen before that, which is always a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, I try and hold myself to a word count daily. And sometimes when you're just pushing through on the words, you'll hit that breakthrough point, that flow state where, the characters you're just writing down what's happening before your eyes kind of thing. And that's a beautiful time. But those moments are always a little surprised because I'm like, oh, we weren't supposed to go here, but okay, away we go.
And those are wonderful times, aren't they?
If only you could flip
just
the
flying.
switch. Yes. I just want to be able to flip the switch when I need that to happen.
Well, if you figure out how to do that, bottle it.
I will.
And then you can send it to everyone.
I'll share it. Spread the love.
So are there things you have to have in place when you write? Like if I reach for a cup of coffee, if there isn't one there, I still reach for it. Are there certain things that you have to do? Do you write in your office? Do you like to write in coffee shops? Do you need noise around you or quiet? Or are there certain things that you have to have in place to write?
Heather, you go first.
Okay. I write in this chair here, right here. I have my birds that come up to the window outside and I feed them. I have a squirrel named Betty that comes up here. She sits here at a little picnic table my husband made me. And so I have them. My muse requires chai tea lattes. Okay. So I have one a day with half an ounce of mixed nuts because they're very high in points. And so I have those. I have my collage. I put my soundtrack on that I create for my books, and I try to get back into it.
So do you do a soundtrack for every book, or do you do one for a series? Or
for a series? I do one for a series, and there will be certain songs though that are for certain characters, and so I will play that song sometimes over and over again as I'm writing something important to that character. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, for me, I am a big fan of water. Out here in Colorado, it's so dry. The other day they said it was bad. The other day it was so dry out here. They said it was like 2% humidity. So we drink a lot of water out here.
Wow.
And so I always have a big glass of water, and I kind of move around. I have an office and I write up here with my bookshelves in my bedroom, and I write outside sometimes, and just kind of depends on the mood and the moment. And I listen to ambient music quite a bit just to try and drop into that zone. And I can't have music with words. Definitely that usually sidetracks me. But when I first started writing, I had 2 young boys, so at home, and they're grown now. But so I got pretty good at just shutting out whatever I need to at times. But it's a lot easier when you can have some quiet and some headspace to kind of dive into the story instead of frequent interruptions, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have a way to get yourself moving again when you get stuck? Is there something that you can do when you find yourself frustrated and stuck?
I try and come up with 3 things that could happen next, and kind of give myself multiple choice.
Great idea.
Yeah, just to try and
finish your own finish your own thing. Very
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. Just to try and, kind of, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, but what are 3 things that could happen? And then usually the idea will come from those. So that's usually my go-to. Or go for a drive. Man, just go on for a drive with your hands on the steering wheel, nobody else in the car, talk it out. That helps too.
I'm a walker, so I'll go for a
great.
walk. And if I can
Yes.
get the blood flowing, that sometimes helps while I'm walking.
Yeah.
I did one technique similar to yours. One time I was in a workshop and they said, write down 5 things that could happen next, but then don't choose any of those. Choose the
Yeah.
6. So it's something kind of out there, off the wall, not your usual,
Right.
but
Don't want to go with the obvious.
right. But you also don't want to go with aliens coming in either,
I heard an editor talking about how one of the things that she sees, as a developmental editor, as a problem in young writers is too many first idea choices, where you use the first idea that comes to you rather than the idea that's most suited to the story. So
yes,
yeah,
that makes total sense. You can't make it too easy or
right.
obvious.
No,
don't want the readers to guess what happens next.
Right, but then they also. It's almost like they need certain things. Like I heard somebody say in a mystery, if you don't have a dead body in the first couple pages, you lose your reader, right?
Yeah.
So like in Regency, I would think you have to have a ball, the readers are not happy. They want, they expect certain things, but they want it different.
Right.
For Highlanders,
we gotta have that we make.
Yes.
Yeah. That's part of the promise we make, and why romance needs to have a happily ever after, because if I'm going to go along on the journey with you, I want to know that you can take me wherever you want to go in between, but I want to know we're going to end up somewhere good.
Right.
I want to know that it's going to work out. I can hang through the black moment and everything else as long as I know that we're going to end up somewhere good. I think it's part of the promise that authors make readers. So.
Absolutely. Definitely. I think that there's enough tragedy in real life that we need as many happy endings as we can, because I'm a big believer that if you read enough happy endings, you kind of draw one towards you.
It's like confirmation bias gets a bad rap and there are reasons not to like it, but there is something about that. If you're always looking for something, you tend to see it. So if you're always looking for good things, you tend to see the good things, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. So ladies, can you tell me what's next for you?
Lana, do you want to go first?
Sure. I have just finished up last weekend the second book in the series with the second eldest daughter, Nora. And so waiting on edits for that. And now I'm plotting Lena, the third daughter's story. So very excited. She is a little bit more like her father and kind of ends up going on a little treasure hunting expedition in a minor way of her own. So it'll be fun to see where that ends up.
Fun. Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And then I'm working, I've just turned in the second book in the series, which is called The Highlander and the Lady of Misrule, because it's a Christmas time book. And fun. Instead of the Lord of Misrule, who gets murdered, who gets assassinated by accident, the Lady of Misrule gets put in his place in Queen Elizabeth's court. Mm-hmm. So we have another Highlander coming down and trying to deal with that. And he is definitely a fish out of water. And this woman, the heroine, she's always fun loving, and she's a happy person. That's why she gets chosen as the Lady of Misrule. But her mother had been a traitor. So everybody looks at her suspiciously to begin with, her and her sister. So including the hero, because she could be the assassin that he's been sent there to find. Oh. So again, I mean, there were so many assassination plots with Elizabeth. It's ripe for drama. Everything about her court.
It must have just been incredibly nerve-wracking to be her too.
Yeah, you could be banished from court by making a loud noise, because she was so and so it was, she was known to do that.
You have to kind of cut people some slack the more you understand.
Yeah.
Well, that all sounds really exciting. I appreciate you ladies taking the time to talk to me today. Alexa Ashton also had a book come out this week, is Empowered by the Earl. which is the second, is the third book in the Second Sons of London series, which it's the interesting setup when the Second Sons become the titled heir. So that's a very cool series. But I'll pop the links for all of the books in the comments. So if you haven't gotten them yet, you can grab them. You want to make sure you get your Dragonblade books when they're on pre-order or release, because that's when they're the very best deal. Or you can read them free with your Kindle Unlimited subscription whenever you want. That I'll make sure that the links are available, so it's really easy for people to get them. And we will be back here at the same time next week. Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it. It was so nice to meet all of you.
Very fun. Thanks so much, Evelyn. Appreciate your time.